Hey, and welcome to another Tech Tuesday. This is Chad from Ascension Worship. This week, we're going to talk about something that people have been asking me for a long time. And frankly, I didn't think that it was really that interesting or helpful until this one situation came along. So today we're going to be talking about user input routing, but we're going to go one step further and show you how you can use it for a multi-console setup with the X32, M32 brand of mixers. So this is going to be similar to some of the previous videos I've done. In this situation, we've got a front of house console. In this case, this was an M32. And then that it was connected to a monitor console. In this case was an X32 rack. The X32 rack is acting as 16 of our inputs, and then it's connected to an SD16 for the other 16 inputs. So as we're going, you can see I've got a X32 edit app open for front of house and for monitors. Both of them will reference the way the cabling is set up. We have the monitor console in the middle. So the A port is connected to the A port of the front of house console, which will be our gain master. And then the B port is connected to the SD16. So we'll have 16 local channels and then 16 through AES50B. Another thing that, just so you can keep this in the back of your mind so it doesn't seem as complicated, I've also recently revised the X32 M32 layout. This is a shared thing that you can check out for yourself, a document. This is you've probably seen this in the previous video. This is where I go in and basically on one page, I put where all my channels are going to be, where all the inputs and outputs are coming from and going to. And this really, really helps me to visualize my scene before I ever start making a bunch of the documentation or the actual scene going forward. And this is really helpful, for making sure that you've got stereo channels where they can actually work for stereo linking and that kind of thing. So we will be using this, particularly the IO page, to help us to figure out some of the stuff we're going to talk about here. So I have done now, before this video, 3 other videos where I talked about connecting multiple consoles, be it front of house and in-ears or broadcast, whatever it's going to be. So I'm not going to go super detailed into all the patching. You can watch some of those videos if you want to know why I do some of the things I do, like offsetting by 16. But I am going to go over the patching very, very quickly in this video because there are a couple key points where it's going to be different from previous videos. So let's hop right in, starting at the source, which is going to be our monitor console. So we are going to go to routing. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass through the information that we're receiving from the X32 rack and the SD16. We're going to pass that through via the A port to the front of house console. And the reason why we do this is going to seem convoluted, but it gives us 3 things that are really important. One, it's going to allow us to do the user patching that we're talking about today. 2, it's going to allow us to make sure that all of our audio is synced up properly when it hits the monitors and the front of house console and everything. And then 3, if we decide to do a virtual sound check later on, we can do that at one of the consoles and it will affect both consoles. So very, very useful for that. So with that in mind, again, we're connected to front of house via the A port. So we're going to go up here to routing AES50 and we're going to output to the A port. So we're going to start by keeping 1 through 16 are going to be outs 1 through 16. And then starting at 17, we've got the local inputs from the X32 rack. And then at A33, we're going to do B1 through 16, which are coming from our SD16. One more thing while we're talking about this, we want to give front of house gain control. So we are going to go to setup, preamps, and then we're going to select HA remote for port A, because again, port A is how we are connected to our other console. So this means that we will have a digital trim at the monitor console, and we'll be passing on gain control to front of house. Because in this situation, there's a front of house engineer and there's not going to be a monitor engineer. Okay, so now that we're sending that information to front of house, we're going to go to front of house, routing. Now, in my previous videos, what I would have done is I would have gone to inputs, and I would have selected, instead of local 1 through 32, we would have done 17 through 48 from the A port, because again, we're connected via the A port to our monitor console. This time in this video, we're going to do one step between this. So instead of getting the channels straight from A 17 through 48, we're going to actually receive them from user ends 1 through 32. And then on the user ends is where we're going to route those 17 through 48 channels in just a little bit here. Okay, we'll come back to the user end routing, but let's go ahead and pass the user end routing. Right now it's going to front of house's channels. We want to also send that to the monitor console. So to do that, very similar to what we did earlier, from the front of house console, we're going to go to AES50. And again, we are sending through the A port. And so we are going to A1 through 16 is going to be the default. It's going to be outputs 1 through 16. But starting at 17, we're going to send user inputs 1 through 32. Okay, now let's receive those at the monitor console. So the monitor console, we're going to go to routing, inputs, and again, as a default, it's set to local. We don't want to do that because we want it to all come from the other console. So we are going to change this to AES50 17 through 48. And then at aux-in remap, we're going to change that to AES50 A 1 through 6. So now we're receiving 32 plus 6, 38 channels from the front of house console directly into channels on our monitor console. And again, you can watch previous videos I've done to see why we're doing this, but basically it means that you can send 6 outputs from front of house for things like your front of house talkback, miscellaneous channels, things that are not part of this main 32. This gives you a little bit more options for things to send. So definitely check out those other videos for some options on what you can do with that. Okay, so we are done with routing. So let's do a hypothetical situation here, and let's say that on the front of house console and the monitor console, let's say that channel 1 is an acoustic guitar. Okay, so we've labeled them both acoustic. Now, it's very important for the sake of this video that you have the same channel layout. And again, that's why we have these resources available for you to figure that stuff out. But you want to have the same channel layout on both front of house and monitors. So we've got acoustic is going to be our channel 1. And then let's say that you've gone through and you figured out where all your different channels are going to be on the boards. And then looking at where people are standing on the stage using this resource over here, we're going to label what channels are going where. So we've got a snake house left, which in this example would be our X32 rack. And then we've got a snake house right, which would be our SD16. So let's say that when we initially installed this, I'm going to just pick a random channel here. Let's say the acoustic guitar needed to be plugged into channel or input 6 on the X32 rack. So you can see on here that I've pre-filled these out to where snake house left, input 6, the front of house source, this is a number that you're going to need to be aware of in a moment here, is A22, and that's for the acoustic guitar. So what I'm going to do on here is just copy and then move over here. And like we said earlier, we figured out that channel 1 on the board was going to be our acoustic. So I'm just going to paste on here. And so you would fill all this stuff out, copy and paste it, and then you've got a handy little list here of your 32 user inputs. So at that time, you would go to your front of house console, routing, user ends, And this is where you're going to start patching in your user inputs. So again, looking at that sheet, user 1 is going to be patched to A22. So on here, I can click anything in this row that says user 1 through 8. And I need to find something, the box says A22, which is going to be this one here. So 1 to 22. And now you can see that user 1 is routed to receive A22. And you do that all the way down through all your 32 channels. Now, the reason why we're doing all this is because by patching this one thing here, the acoustic guitar, which is plugged into input 6 over here, is going to be showing up on the front of house console because that's listening to user 1, and it's going to show up on the monitor console because that's also listening to user 1. And so the beautiful thing is that, you know, let's say Easter comes around and you've revamped the entire stage and you have the same channel layout on your board, but now the acoustic guitarist is standing on the opposite side of the stage. Well, no worries. Looking at our handy sheet here, it's no longer located here. It's somewhere over here. Acoustic. So again, for my reference, I'll just copy and paste. I know it's going to be on channel 1 on the board, so I'm going to paste there. And then again, when I go to fix my patching, user 1 is now A39. So only at the front of house console do you need to do this. But again, routing 1 is A39. So I click on 39 now and you see it changes. And so again, now that patching will affect both the front of house channel 1 and the monitor channel 1. And if you had a broadcast console, it would be channel 1 on there as well, if you route it the same way. So this just means that now from here on, as long as your channel layout on both consoles is the same, you only need to patch it in one location. You don't need to hop onto a tablet or anything to connect to the X32 rack, where there's more possibility of you accidentally messing something up and having it be correct at one console and not the other. This means that as long as both channels are listening to user 1, you only have to patch it in one location and it will be correct in all your other locations. So I hope that's helpful for you. I know there's a lot of steps in there. Again, if you have questions, you can ask me in the comment section below, or you can check out my previous videos. I'll put a link to the most recent video, other than this one, about multi-console connections. I'll also put a link in the description to this free resource. It is very, very helpful. I highly encourage you, anytime you make a new scene, to fill this out first, and you will find that it will save you a lot of time in the long run. And of course, this is something you can print out as well. I mentioned in other videos, but if you haven't seen those, to use this resource, do not ask me for access to this file. I don't offer that. Instead, with your own Google Drive account, once you go to this link, you're just going to go to File, Make a Copy, and then you can copy this onto your own Google Drive, which is a free resource. And then from there, you can start editing it yourself. All right, guys, I hope that's helpful. Until next time, have a great week.